Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. I hope that you have your superhero for your finger and a needle and some thread, because we're going to be doing a ton of hand stitching in today's episode. We're going to start out by pick stitching the break line. This is going to do two things. It's going to make sure that all that beautiful ease that we put into the bridal stays there permanently. And it's also going to maintain the integrity of the break line. And then the second thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to pad stitch the lapel in such a way that you get a perfect amount of roll. You won't want to miss what's going on today, so stick around. That's what's happening in the atelier. So we're going to get ready to pick stitch the break line and pad stitch the lapel, all right? But the very first thing that I want to do is I want to transfer my lapel to the other side onto the canvas, okay? Now, the thing about tailoring that you have to realize is that we're always doing things and planning like 5 or 6 steps ahead, okay? So the reason why I'm not going in and just starting to pad stitch my lapel right away is because after we finish pad stitching this lapel, we're going to be shaping the fronts. And in shaping the front, what we're doing is we're actually going to be cutting back the canvas, all right? Just the canvas here, all right? So you can see I've transferred my beautiful lapel line, okay? I've transferred the top of the lapel. Here's my button position here, okay? And so what I'm planning on doing is I'm planning on cutting back this canvas, all right, about 1 1/4 centimeters, all right? So I'm cutting it back 1 1/4 centimeters. So I'm going to just mark that in because I don't need to pad stitch where I'm going to be cutting it back, all right? Now you say, why, Marlene, are you cutting your canvas back? Well, this is, again, a soft structured tailoring technique, all right, where we cut this part of the canvas out and we leave the cloth, all right? We're going to go in and we're going to add a little bit of bias lining tape and fold the edge back. So we don't sew the edge of the front of this jacket. This is all done by hand. And as such, the facing is also put in by hand, all right? So that's what we're going to accomplish here. So this area that I'm marking out is not going to be pad stitched or pick stitched, all right? Or pick stitched. And here is our break line here. Draw that back in because it kind of got a little taken out here a little bit. All right, so we know where everything is on the back here. That's lovely. All right, so I know exactly where I'm going to pad stitch and pick stitch. Right now, to do this, I'm going to, once again, I'm going to use some machine thread that I'm running through. I'm going to use a pretty small needle here. I don't need a big needle. All right, to do my pick stitching. All right, and I'm going to run this through my lovely beeswax. Okay, I'll get that out of the way. I'll get this out of the way. And bring the baby over. So we'll just press that off a little bit. So the reason why I'm using machine thread and not my hand silk is because the machine thread is really thin. And when I'm doing handwork like this, where I don't want it to be detectable, I don't want to see my pad stitches coming through on my cloth on the outside. So I want to use a really super thin thread, and that would be this machine thread. All right. So what we're going to be doing is I'm just looking to see how I want to position this. Yeah, I'll start from the top. So what I'm going to do is I want to start from the top here, where I've come down my 1 1/4 centimeters. This is where I want to start my pick stitch, okay? So I'm going to pop that through. And again, if you need to, you can come in with your ruler. It's not a bad idea. And just draw in your break line with a little bit of chalk so you have something to follow, okay? That's important. Just so we have something to follow here. All the way down, okay? All right. So I'll come in and we'll do this lovely pick stitch all the way down the break line. Now again, this is something that is really super small and kind of hard to see, okay? In fact, just get my line a little bit more definitive here. So, but the idea of doing this, okay, is to, in pick stitching the break line, we're basically putting the break line in permanently, okay? And we also need something to hold that beautiful bridle that we put in, okay? So once we have this pick stitched, the break line will be in here forever and ever and ever. We'll never lose it. We'll always know where it is, okay? And it'll hold the bridle in. And so as I'm pick stitching, and if I know a few videos ago I said that there was a pick stitching video available in the Atelier in a Minute area of the Marlene's Atelier YouTube channel, yeah? So if you go to Atelier in a Minute, you can catch a video on how to pick stitch, so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now here, my pick stitch is very close together. I mean, literally 2 or 3 millimeters apart. And so it's really important that I get this close together and straight and close. Because once again, we're holding that bridle in and we're permanently putting the break line in. All right, so I'm going to keep going here and finish this out. And like I always say, you don't need to sit here and watch me just endlessly pick stitch, okay? I'm just going to keep working all the way down my break line, and we'll pick it up when I finish. We'll be right back with that. All right, so I've got my break line all pick stitched in, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take out these basting stitches now that I used to put the bridle in, okay? So we want to get all those out. We don't need them anymore. They served their purpose. Thank you very much, right? So we'll get all those out. And the other thing that's important to note is, although I finished pick stitching all down my break line, I did not break my thread. I left it hanging here, and that's really important, okay? Because we're going to jump right into pad stitching here in a moment. And so I just wanted to get this out of the way. Obviously, this got caught here and there in my pick stitch, so it's being a little difficult. And I don't want to break my pick stitch. There we go. Okay. A little tricky. There we go. All right. All right, so we have all that out. Lovely. Let's get that out of the way. So what I want to do here is I just want to highlight where my pick stitches are, because that is literally my break line. You see all those little teeny weeny stitches that I have. All right. Now what we want to do when we start pad stitching is I don't want to pad stitch right on the break line, right? I'm going to come slightly off. So what I'm going to do, as always, I always say, don't suffer through things, right? We're going to come in here and we're going to pad stitch every centimeter, all right? So I'm going to come in and I'm going to give myself a guideline to start with. This way I can just pad stitch away, right? And if you're just starting and you've never pad stitched before, again, this is a great way to develop your technique because the most important thing is that you're pad stitching properly. And in this particular instance, what we're doing with our pad stitches is we're not only creating ease, okay, between these 3 layers, all right, such as we did here when we pad stitched our 3 layers on the chest together, but we're also giving it shape because we want our lapel to curve, okay? And so there's a lot to concentrate on between creating ease, getting the curve. We're going through 3 layers and we don't want to see our stitches on the outside of our garment, all right? We don't want to see our stitches on the outside of the garment. So we have to be very careful and pay attention to the pick stitch technique and not worry about how far apart things are here, okay? So I am just going to continue here until the top. And I only need 1 line to start, okay? Only need 1 line to start. All right. So we have a lot of coat here, all right? So let me get myself situated and organized so we can start. Okay. Now again, this is going to be a little tough for you to see because this is black thread and I'm working on black. As I get out here, you'll be able to see a little bit more. But the most important thing, more than anything else, is when you're pick stitching now, you're going to be wrapping these 3 layers, the body canvas, the the silicea, and the cloth around your finger to create that shape, okay? So I'm coming here just slightly, maybe about a ½ centimeter off of the break line, all right? And when I pad stitch, I'm bringing my needle down into the cloth until I just feel it start to touch my finger, okay? And then I'm pulling it back up, catching all 3 layers, okay? And then I'm going to move to my next row or my next mark here, okay? And do the same thing. And what you can do as you're going along is you can look underneath here and see, did I catch the cloth and do I see my needle? Okay? So as you come up and catch that cloth, you shouldn't see your needle at all. What you should see is just a little dimple, okay? So I'm not sure if you can see, I have just a little dimple here where my needle has caught the canvas, the silicea, and the cloth, all 3 layers. In fact, with the bridal, it's 4 layers right now, okay? So, and what I want to do is curve the cloth around my finger. Now, we're going to just work our way down the break line, or up the break line in this particular case. If you're right-handed, you're going to be pad stitching, okay, from right to left. So I've got the free edge of my coat in my non-working hand, all right? All right, when we're pad stitching, we're not pulling the thread tight at all. We're just letting it sit on the cloth. There's no reason for it to be tight. If you're doing the pad stitch properly and you're picking up all 3 layers and you're curving it around your finger, then believe me, you will be putting shape into this. You don't need to pull anything tight. In fact, that's almost counterproductive, okay? So the important thing about pad stitching is not only the stitch itself, but also the way the stitches are done. And if you remember, when we pad stitched our chest, we staggered our stitches. In other words, you know, here, this stitch came in between or came to the middle of the last row. And we're going to be doing the same thing as well. If you want to curve your cloth even more, or you feel more comfortable holding the jacket like this, okay, where you have it laying flat and you can curve the break line and give a little bit more tension here. This is really the way I like to work, because I can make sure that I can feel my needle coming through the cloth very nicely, okay? And I know exactly how much tension I need to get that roll. So I like to work in this fashion, but there's just to show you a couple different ways on how to go about doing it, okay? So what we're going to do when I get to the end of this row is I'm going to stagger my stitches. I'm only going to come over about 1/2 centimeter, and I can put a little chalk line in. If you want to put a chalk line in, that's 1/2 centimeter over to help yourself. You can do that. I don't always. I feel that just visually I can picture that. But if you're just getting started pick stitching, then this is a great way. That's a great way to help you concentrate on the stitch itself. So I'm not sure, you probably can't see it right now, but eventually what we'll end up seeing under here is a bunch of little dimples, okay? You'll just see a bunch of little dimples that all come through the lapel area. And that's how you know that you're doing it correctly, all right? So I'm going to keep going here. And when I get to the end of this row, what I'll do is I'll highlight once again my pad stitches with some chalk so you can see them. All right? And again, I'm just curving this around my finger and picking up, going through the 3 layers. And the 3rd layer, the cloth, I'm just grabbing a few strands, okay? I'm not going all the way out to the outside of the cloth. So if I turn this here, right, here's my needle, but it's not coming to the outside. I just see a little dimple there, okay? That's how I know I've done it correctly. If you see your shiny needle coming through, or you're stabbing yourself in the finger, okay, every time you put your needle in, you're not doing it right. Please don't stab yourself in the finger. That's not a healthy thing for your hand to go through. Tailoring does not have to be that painful, okay? That would be just very bad. Also here, I should probably, before I keep going here, this is starting to be a little annoying. I'm just going to come in and trim this silicea out of the way so that, because it's starting to get in my way as I'm working here. I'll get that out of here. There we go. Just get that. Just throw it on the floor. Okay? We do want to be careful with the cloth. So if you want to just roll it up a little bit and hold it in your hand a little bit more gently than crumpling it all up, which is never a good thing. Okay? So here I just have a few more stitches up to the top. And then we're going to come down and stagger. In fact, I think what I might do is I might go ahead and work my way into the canvas and then come back and show you what that looks like, because you really can't see what's happening here with the black thread on top of the black silicea. So why don't I do that? I'll come back here in a minute so you don't have to sit here and be like, I don't know what the hell she's doing. Okay. All right, give me a few minutes and I'll be right back with that. So I said we wanted to stagger our stitches. First of all, what I want to show you is how the roll in this lapel has started to develop. So you can see here, even though, you know, we've got this plaid, which is not always easy to see, you can see the dimples that have started to form through this. And you can see this beautiful roll that's occurring now because of the way we're pad stitching. And so again, what is important, and the other thing I'd like you to notice here as well, is that anytime I finished a thread, I didn't knot it, I didn't tack it, I just left the little ends hang out and I just picked up where I left off, okay? We don't want any knots, we don't want any tacks, we don't want any additional thickness in here if we can avoid it, all right? And again, I've been keeping my stitches about a ½ centimeter apart each row. So here, if I come down to my next row right here, all right, I'm just staggering. So in other words, if you look at this stitch right here, I'm not going to be meeting the stitch here or here. I'm going to be coming right in between, all right, from the last. So we're always staggering the stitches when we pad stitch. All right. And again, I'm just curving it around my finger. I'm bringing my needle into the canvas until I feel it just about touch my finger, my index finger. In fact, I don't know if you can see, but my index finger has a beautiful, beautiful callus on it from tailoring, which is a good thing. We like to have calluses. We like to have calluses from tailoring, okay? So again, we're just going to work. I've only got a few more rows here, but I'll continue working, and you can stick with me if you want. And it's nice, you kind of get into this nice little rhythm as you pad stitch, which is really lovely. And it's not hard, it takes a little bit of time. I think when you start, you know, a lot of people who first get into hand tailoring or tailoring where you're doing a lot of hand work, I think sometimes they get discouraged, and you can't. The idea is, you know, you don't have to execute everything perfectly the first time. In fact, it's good if you don't, because it's called honing the skill. And it takes time to develop your hand. It takes time to know how much pressure do you need in order to do a good pad stitch or a cross stitch or anything, because it's all about feel. And you know, we're always working where we don't want our stitch to be seen on the outside of the garment. When I talked earlier about turning back the edge here, and we'll be putting on some bias edge tape. And in doing that, and putting that edge tape on, okay, we're going to be cross-stitching it. And as we cross-stitch, okay, we don't want to go through to the outside of the cloth. So we have to develop a hand that allows us just enough pressure to pick up the things that we need to pick up. In that particular case, it would be the canvas and the bias tape, and not go through to the outside. So it's just practice, practice, practice. And the more you practice, the better you get. And you pick up your own little tricks. I mean, I remember when I first started pad stitching anything, I didn't give myself a guideline. And it used to drive me absolutely BS crazy, because it would take me forever. I'd be like, oh, that stitch is too long, or that stitch is too short. Or those don't, you know, it doesn't stagger right. So I eventually just said, this is stupid. I'm going to just give myself a little guideline and concentrate on doing the stitch right. And it totally works out and is so much more enjoyable to go about it that way. And it's just that first little guideline. That's all you need. And then everything else will fall into place. So easy. Very easy. So that is pad stitching the lapel. It's a beautiful, fun thing. And when you start seeing that lapel curve and look so beautiful, it really, you start to understand why bespoke tailoring is such a beautiful trade or a beautiful craft, because you're actually taking a flat piece of cloth, right? This cloth was 150% flat 10 minutes ago when we started this. There was no shape to it whatsoever. And here we are 10 or 15 minutes later, and we've got a beautiful roll in the lapel. Like, it doesn't even want to lay flat. Look at that. It's like a little tidal wave just coming into play. And that's what makes tailoring so beautiful, is that we get to create things with our own hands, right? And it's just, who else can do that? A sewing machine is fine. That's fine. I'm not going to ditch on sewing machines. But I just feel so much more satisfied when I look at something that I've made with my own hands and said, wow, that was just a flat piece of cloth when I started. That was a flat piece of cloth. That was a flat piece of cloth. And over the course of, 4 or 5 weeks, I turned it into a beautiful garment that, I enjoy wearing. Yeah, I enjoy wearing. So that's what makes tailoring a beautiful thing. But it's all about the hand stitches and practicing your hand stitches. Those are the most important thing in the world. So even if you get yourself a little piece of canvas and you put together a little sample for yourself, and you put 3 layers together of some leftover cloth that you have, and just practice on a little sample piece. That's all it will take for you to develop your hand. It might take you, 5 or 6 times to try it, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how quickly your hand will develop when you put the time into it. The first thing, obviously, is learning how to use the superhero, right, for your finger. That's what I call my thimble, is my little superhero. And because he gives my hands superpowers, so I can sew efficiently, makes me very agile, protects my little finger from getting the needle poked into it. So that doesn't feel very good at all. So we just have another row or so here before we finish up. Again, I'm staying within the confines of my chalk line that I put in earlier, okay? And what we're going to do when we finish pad stitching this here in a moment is what? What do you think we're going to do? Right? We're going to press this out, because anytime we put ease in, we have to press it out. And this is going to look so incredibly lovely now. So incredibly lovely, just to finish out another row or so. So yeah, so we have some really cool hand stitches that we're doing. And like I said, coming up, when we shape the front, which is going to be the next thing we do here, you'll be looking at how to cross stitch. And that's a lovely thing to work on, cross stitching. It's great. I love cross stitching. It's probably one of the more widely used stitches in tailoring. So we're going to pad stitch one more time. We're going to actually be pad stitching our under collar. I'm going to save that until we get to the collar. A lot of times tailors will prepare all of those things right up front. So, when we were cutting the cloth and the lining and the canvases and so forth, we could have cut the collar at that point. In fact, it's probably not a bad idea, before we put the front and the back together, to measure out and make sure that we've got the right length for our collar. That's very important. So we'll probably do that at some point so we can at least cut the collar, the Demet, or excuse me, the Melton that we'll use, and the linen that we'll use for the collar. And that's a prime example. Oh my God, that's a prime example of taking two pieces of cloth that are flat as pancakes. And the collar linen is so stiff, right? And shaping that into a collar, you know, an undercollar. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I was over the moon the first time I made my first undercollar, and it turned out well. That was it. Then tailoring turned into heroin for me. And I had to have my fix every day. So it was like tailoring. That's what it is. I can't imagine not tailoring. I just can't. I can't imagine not tailoring every day, because I pretty much do. Yeah. There's days that my husband gets a little annoyed with me, but that's all right. All right. So this is basically my last little stitch here. Couple. I'm going to just, even though I'm coming over my line, that's okay. I can always cut these out. There's a little bit up here in the corner that I want to get to and make sure that I've got the corner done well, because that's going to be important here, right? So we're just going to give a couple of pad stitches to finish this out so we have a nice corner. Okay, there we go. All right, so there we have it, our beautiful lapel all pad stitched. Look at that. It just wants to roll. Isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful. All right, so now we've done all this work, and you see all of the ease, all that wrinkling in here. That's a good thing. That's ease. We want that. That's what's making the lapel roll. And because we've put this in here, okay, it's never, ever, ever going to come out, ever. Okay, it's there forever. The one thing we will have to do over here is I will pad stitch the other side of the bridle down. It's going to be very big stitches. It's just to hold it down. We're not going to give it any shape. I'm going to leave it flat, okay? So I'm not going to do that on film, but just know all you have to do is put a couple rows of pad stitches here, and they can be like, 2 centimeters apart or 3 centimeters apart, just to hold this down nicely, okay? So it doesn't come off. And you only have to work up to the top here. You don't have to come all the way up here. Don't do that. Just come to where your pad stitches end, okay? That's easy. So let's press this out, all right? We're going to press this out. So we're going to put water all over this nicely. And you know what? I want you to get it fairly wet, okay? I want this to be fairly wet. So don't be shy about the water on this particular occasion, because we want all this steam, okay? We're going to create all this steam. That's why I use, like a little dipping rag, if you will, and water instead of, the steam from the reservoir, because I can direct exactly where I want to create that steam and that heat. And in this particular instance, we need that water to really take all that beautiful ease that we put in and shrink it out. That's what we're doing, is we're shrinking it out. And at the same time, this lapel is still going to roll beautifully, beautifully. Now, of course, we have to do the same thing on the other side. So I'll have to come in and I'll have to do all the pad stitching on this side as well. It's always double the work. But you see how it's like bubbling back up again because it's not dry. So we want to make sure that's real dry. So it's nice and flat. Nice and flat. So that is contained. That ease is in there, and that shape will stay forever and ever and ever. So the lapel, if we look back, what we've done now, right, is we've protected, we've gone in and we've maintained the integrity of the break line, right, by putting the bridal in and putting a little bit of ease in the bridal to shape the break line so it's not so flat. It has a very nice bow to it, yeah? Then we solidified the break line by actually going in and pick stitching it. All right, so now it's there forever. You'll never lose where that break line is by pick stitching it. And then we went in and we added shape by pad stitching the lapel, all by hand, all beautifully done. All right, and so this is permanent now, and this is why bespoke is so special. All done by hand. So I'll finish pressing this out, and then I'm going to move on to my other side and get that done. And we're ready to move on to shaping the front of this jacket next. Thank you for joining me in the atelier today. If you've gotten value from this lesson, please do like, share, and subscribe. I really do appreciate it. And in my next lesson, we're going to start shaping the front edge of our jacket by trimming back just a bit of the canvas and turning in the edge. You won't want to miss this next episode, so I look forward to seeing you next time in the atelier.